Yell.
Okay, everybody, we ready to start? Woo!
Love chit-chatting.
Okay, we're going to start with some preliminary announcements, and I've got a few things, and then we'll get to the questions and all that.
Okay, first of all, the rest, hey, still a lot of talking, right? Thank you. Okay, I lost my voice a little this morning because they were mowing and we were doing our little garden tour, so I've had to yell a lot. Just a quick thing about the rest of the schedule for the class. We've got one more meeting here next week. Ooh, I don't know why that's talking at me. We're here again next week for ornamentals and garden planning. The ornamentals, we're going to take a little walk through the whole garden. Today we're focusing on the native plants, but we will point out a few ornamentals that have some benefits too. Next week we're going to really kind of go into some of these nether regions of the garden. Garden planning too, we've got some really good examples here at the Botanical Garden of different types of gardens. We've got parterres, we've got a working vegetable garden, we've got an herb spiral, so that should be a really good one also. It's going to be more of a walk and talk, kind of like today is as well. The week after that, we've got lawns and lawn alternatives. Chris is going to help us with that one. I know that's a hot topic locally, right? We all want to get rid of our lawns. Some of us, a lot. We'll also be distributing the final exams that class day. We're going to give it to you electronically and a paper copy. You can turn it in either way. We have some students who are leaving for vacation, so we want to make sure you guys can do it. Remember, that's open book, open note, open lecture. Try not to work together. Try to do it yourself. It's about 150 questions, and it should take you a minimum of 3 hours. So budget some time to get through that. Any questions about the exam? I know you guys probably have some.
When do we have to turn it in?
You get 2 weeks. Or no, you're right. It is 1 week. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's 1 week.
So we get it next week and it's due the next week.
You don't get it next week, it's the week after next.
You're going to get it on the 4th of August. And it is due back the 11th. And then
Party on the 18th.
we party on the 18th, hopefully. So, yeah, we're working on that. Okay, so any questions about the rest of the schedule? So we're here next week. We're at Delgado the next weeks after that, and then we're done. We are thinking the 18th, that party time will probably be here.
Yes.
Yeah, which is fun, and it'll be potluck style, right? So stay tuned for that. I do want to mention we had Jim Poche come talk about the Fall Garden Show last week. The sign-ups got sent out to the general membership, but I also have a sign-up that's going to go out to just the new trainees. You guys are responsible for the Master Gardener info booth. That'll be right here, actually, across the corridor in the Lath House. I need somebody from this class to work with the chair from the morning class, so there'll be 2 co-chairs to design and build the booth, plus a committee of about 5 to 6 people who can help them put it together, and I'll be working with you guys. And then to staff the booth on the 11th and 12th of September. So you'll get 2 sign-up links. I'll send it as soon as class is done. Feel free to plug in wherever you want to with the garden show. There's a lot of different options. You can help in the office. You can be a floater. You can help with the chef demos. You can help in here with the educational talks, which is great because you can count that as education hours. You get to listen to all the lectures. We've got people taking tickets and checking receipts. It's kind of all hands on deck, and we have about 90 positions for each day. There's usually 3 or 4 hour shifts. And what's great about that is you can work a shift and then enjoy the garden free for the rest of the day. And that includes all the chef demos, the lectures, all the lanyap. So
And you can sign up for one shift at one spot and another shift at another spot.
yeah, yep.
So if you're easily bored.
And if you come help on Friday or the days leading up to the show, especially Friday, you get to see what the vendors are selling and kind of get a jump on it, because a lot of them will sell out with some of the special stuff. Huh? Oh, typically throughout the week, they're during our normal 8 to 4:30 work hours. Friday, we go till 6 p.m., so we get here around 6 in the morning, and they start loading in at 7.
We get, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Like the show opens at 9, but we're usually here at least 2 hours prior.
Yeah.
Because even Saturday morning, some vendors who don't come Friday evening will be here. And the biggies, those hours before the show officially opens to the public, is manning gates, and only vendors are in and out.
Yep.
So that kind of makes them feel good. And
Making coffee. We need help making coffee.
and giving the vendors some advice, because also the vendors have a packet that they pick up whenever they first check in. And so there's usually a master gardener sitting at that table giving them their packets, and if they need some direction here and there. So there's all kinds of things that are going on.
Saturday, and Sunday from 7
Until 4 or whenever we're done. They are shifts, and it's an automatic sign-up sheet, so it will tell you what hours those shifts are for and a little bit about which each task or volunteer slot is. We're using volunteer sign-up, and it used to be called volunteer spot, I think.
And Saturday, does it go to 5 or 4?
It goes to 4. So
So
that,
Saturday, it will end right around 4.
Right.
Everybody will be going home.
But
And just
Sunday
leaving
goes
stuff.
later.
Sunday, it'll close to the public at 4. Vendors will be getting out, so they'll
Mm-hmm.
take a while to get out, and then we go around and check things. So Sunday, it can go till 7 or
7 or
later.
8, yeah. We try to get them out by 8. Yes?
What are the dates again for the show?
September 11th and 12th. We're also using the week ahead of that to flag where the vendors go, to make signage. We've got different chairmen for each thing.
Can you volunteer for those things?
Yeah,
That's
they'll
on the
all be
sign-up
on the
sheet, too.
sign-up spot.
Yep.
And that's on the website.
I'm going to email it to you as soon as class is over. We wanted to send it to you guys separate so that you have a chance at the slots, and also the booth is separate because the general master gardeners are not in charge of it for the fall. You guys are. Is anyone interested in co-chairing the booth? You don't have to answer now. Come find me after class.
And the booths, like Anna, you guys have seen booths. She said, building and all that, well, it's not a lot of, there's not sawing and hammering and nailing, but
Right.
using your creativity to design how it would look. Like one year, they designed it so it was like walking into a Florida room. So it's kind of here, as you walked over onto the thing, you were going through the door, and they had all kinds of tropical stuff around and things like
That's
that.
prior to the event?
That is during the event.
Oh, during?
You set it up, you
Prior.
plan and all that planning and everything is volunteer hours.
Yep.
And you do that definitely prior to the event, and then you come Friday and set it up, and then
And then
make
it's
sure
staffed
it's manned,
Saturday and
staffed
Sunday.
all day, Saturday and Sunday.
Well, that'll be automatic because they're signing up.
Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. In the past, they've done themes like, was it fragrant herbs? They did that a few years ago. They did hummingbird plants at the last one. That was really cool.
Super plants at one of them.
Gardening for children, that was another good theme.
That one, they had a lot of hands-on stuff for kids when they came to visit.
Yeah, community gardens, I remember that was an excellent one too. I have photos of some of the old booths to give you guys some inspiration. It's a 10 by 10 foot space, and typically we can fit a couple of 8-foot tables on it. We've got some banners, different supplies, so it can be really fun. It's one of my favorite parts. Okay, so if anyone's interested in co-chairing that with me, and in the morning class we've got Anandi, she's going to help. It should be a lot of fun, and we're going to work together, and then we'll have a committee of people together for like the artsy craftsy stuff too. So come let me know. Joe wrapped up with compost. Sounds like some of you were over there. Yeah, so quite a few
There's
people.
more compost here that's going to go.
Did you guys take, huh? Did you?
Evening class has twice as much as morning
Yeah.
class.
Did you guys take the temperature? What was it?
Temperatures were right around 120, couple degrees. And then
Okay.
one of whoever came over there first, they stirred. Yeah, she stirred it and mixed everything up, and then there'll be more that goes on, and then
Well,
since
let it
ends, adding to it today. Now, it's critical to follow the temperature. When it reaches the temperature you want, then you do a stir real hard to get all that outside to the inside and the inside to the outside. It reaches temperature one more time, and you do one more stir, and it reaches temperature again, and then it meets the FSMA rules for clean compost that's ready to be used in vegetable gardens if you were a commercial grower and selling them. They say it's clean, no pathogens, no problem.
We're gonna use it here.
We'll probably use it at the little demo gardens across the street because they have not had compost added to them in a while. It's, through the pandemic, they weren't really maintained. So.
This week. Yeah, we originally said the 28th, but then we want to make sure it has plenty of time
To break down.
and get near completion, so we made this the last day.
Yep. Okay, I'm pulling up the final project guidelines. Are you guys ready for that? You get to pick your topics.
Yes, you get to pick your topic in that. It's a blind draw.
Yep. And there are 2 topics per paper, right?
So you do have a choice because there's 2 topics on each paper. So we are giving you a choice.
Yeah.
Your mission, if you decide to accept it. Oh. So I'm going to go around and let everybody choose one. And the reason we kind of do it like this is it's not to make it hard or anything like that. It's just some people in here will know some subject really, really well. And for them, they draw it out and say, I already got pictures of that. I don't have to do anything. What we want is, as master gardeners, a master gardener needs to be able to have a topic, research it, and get science-based information to use, and then to present it in a way that communicates to the public. And so that's why we, even if you have a passion for something, you're probably not going to pull it out of here.
You never know. Okay, so here are the guidelines, and keep this in mind as you're choosing which of your 2 topics to do. This is on the Moodle under the Final Projects tab, everything I'm about to say.
Yeah, they're pretty long.
The topics are assigned at random by the LSU Ag Center agents. Each presentation is not to exceed 5 minutes in length. Presentations will be timed and cut off at the 5-minute mark. We do them all in one day, and it takes us a while to get through them. We're going to film them as well. That way, if they're super good, we can use them as little clips on the Facebook page for G&O Gardening. Huh? Can we keep, okay, some students are having a hard time hearing. Let's keep the chatter down. We are going to film them, as I said, so if they're super good, we can share them on the Master Gardener social media accounts, and you guys might get famous. Awesome. But also that's for our reference, too, because we go back and look at them. We share them with Dr. Shields. It's just a nice thing to have on record. You can use notes and note cards, so you don't have to memorize the content that you're going to present. Okay? You have 4 different options for the types of presentation you can do. And keep in mind, it's got to take 5 minutes. You can do a PowerPoint. Please bring your presentation on a flash drive or email your presentation to me ahead of time with your name, Master Gardener presentation, and morning or evening in the subject line. You can also bring it in that flash drive, but we prefer to have them preloaded. It saves some time, especially when we're going from one presentation to the other. 5 minutes of slideshow is typically 5 slides or less. So keep that in mind. Unless you talk really, really fast. Yes?
Sorry, did you say that we can record them?
You can pre-record them. Okay, that was a great question. Can we have less talking, please? Shh. Okay, some folks are going to miss that final class for vacation and family reasons. You can pre-record and submit them if you're going to miss class. If you are physically in attendance, though, you need to present it live. Okay? That's a great question. So you can do that. You can do a poster. Flat posters or traditional trifold science fair style are accepted. We've had some really good ones over the years. Educational displays can include plants, props, tools, etc., in addition to your poster. With the posters, we're doing a 3-minute oral presentation to interpret the poster display, plus additional time for describing the other materials you might bring in. So 5 minutes total. If you're going to do a poster, let us know ahead of time so we have tables set up for you to set up your display. Okay?
Did everybody get one?
Everyone got one? Okay. Third choice, speech with visual aids. This can be a traditional kind of speech with note cards kind of thing. Feel free to bring props. 5 minutes. Visual aids may include plants, insects, tools, printed photos, etc. We've had people just print photos and laminate them and bring them in and do like a show and tell. The last option is a demonstration. If you have a topic where it makes sense to kind of show the class how to do something, that might be a good option. Presentation, physically demonstrating the topic you are presenting. This may be better suited to those how-to topics, right? So make sure you bring props and you give yourself enough time to demonstrate the technique that you're presenting. Presentations are graded on educational value and content, adherence to the time limit, and the accuracy. So that's that science-based, research-based information that Joe was mentioning. That's really important. That's what we're really looking for of the content. So we will cut you off at the 5-minute mark. We have a scoring rubric. It counts into your final grade. Make sure you time and practice it ahead of time so you know how long it's going to take you to get through it. Yes?
There's a I'm not shooting for the minimum, but if there's a 5-minute maximum, what is the goal and what is the minimum?
There's no minimum. But keep in mind,
30 seconds would be kind of short.
you're getting graded on the content, so yeah.
Okay, so wait, you said we're gonna be the educational value, content, and adherence to the time of the
And the accuracy.
accurate. And what was the third type?
Okay, you can do a PowerPoint, you can do a poster, you can do a speech, or a demonstration.
There's 2 things on here. So are you doing both of these things?
No, you
One.
choose one. Remember, I
Choose
told
one.
you you have a choice. That's your choice. You get to choose one of those 2.
Yep, choose one.
Oh, and we told the morning class, and we tell you guys, if you're musically talented, you want to write a song and bring your instrument and play and sing, do it.
Or if you want to do a cooking demo or something, if you got like a vegetable or a fruit and you want to tell us about the fruit and make a recipe with it, we had people do that too. So just some
If you,
ideas.
You know, if your topic is something to do with an edible,
Are there any questions? Yes. Can you yell? I'm losing my voice.
okay, guys, here's a question. You might want to know the answer.
Yes.
I'm sorry, you were saying how to label it if we bring it to you on a jump drive? What we have to
You don't need to label it if you're bringing it on a jump drive. If you email it to us, and this is all on here, your name, what class you're in, and Master Gardener presentation, so I know what it is.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So pick one of these.
Pick one. Yep.
One.
And Joe came up with the topics. I have no idea what they are this year. I'll be just as surprised. Throw him under the bus.
Yes, you
Any other questions about the final presentations? Okay, you've
These
got.
are really fun.
They are really fun. So,
But it amazes us. I mean, we know that we're great teachers and you guys are great students, but still, the quality of the presentations at the end are phenomenal. You guys are going to be amazed at each other. How much information you can actually present in only 5 minutes.
But this is, when do we have to prepare this for? In 2 weeks?
yeah, you've got 2 weeks.
It's on the 11th.
It's on the 11th, and again, there is a very detailed course schedule on the Moodle. So all of that's on there.
It's due the same day the exams due.
Oh, great.
That was your assignment. No, it's due on the 11th, right?
It's due. Final presentations are due on the 11th.
That's 3 weeks.
You will get your final exam on the 4th. It's due back on the 11th. Yep.
She said, oh, that's not right. We have the exams due and the presentation on the same day.
That's how we got to do it. Yep. Yep. Other questions before we jump into Q&A? Okay, we're good. Okay, that's good.
Okay, you guys know the top? Oh, there's a question.
Nobody has failed it. Nobody's failed it. You'll be able to get through it.
No. So did you guys know the topics this past week were native plants and organic gardening. So now's the time to ask any question you might have about any of those presentations.
Well, not the presentation, but in the book.
and I asked them, I kind of have an idea. It was on the cover crops, and it says crops are grown and terminated before reaching peak maturity. They are then tilled or otherwise incorporated into the soil. So what does it mean, terminate? Like weed whack them?
Yep.
Like,
Weed whacking, you can plow them under. There's a machine called a roller crimper. It's like a steamroller that rolls them and then crimps the stem so it kills them. Yeah, terminal just means kill them. In a home garden, most people will either hand pull or cut them or use a weed whacker. Yep.
Yeah, it must have been the morning
think
class
it was the
last
morning.
week that there were quite a few questions on the cover crop, and that's when Anna was saying, you know, and you thinking the reason you don't want, if you plant cowpeas as a cover crop, you don't want them to mature and have seed, and then you terminate them because
You just planted more
all those
cowpeas.
seeds.
so they, when they say terminate before this,
Usually with each crop, there's a ideal stage to do it where you've maximized your biomass and the amount of nutrients you're going to put back into the soil based on the flowering stage. So like with cowpeas, we don't want them to be setting their seeds, right? Because they're putting all their energy into the seeds. It's not going to be so much in the biomass. And I've made that mistake where I planted them because I waited too long. Yeah, oops. Oh, yeah.
Composting for organic gardening, I'm a little confused about colored inks on newspapers. I know we're not supposed to do the glossies advertising.
Right.
But if there's an age, because some newspapers are part color or black and white.
None of the comments?
Yeah, so is it okay to use colored inks as long as it's not glossy paper? Because one thing I read in the organic gardening section was something about no colored ink, I think.
Yeah, it really depends, and each paper is going to be different, and each magazine is going to be different. Most of the inks are soy-based, but it's the pigments that they're concerned about. What's the certified organic compost?
But do you think, you know, the majority of, especially newspapers, have moved away from anything that would be harmful? Because, I mean, you got printed comics. Adults never read the comics, right? So you got kids reading them, you know, ink comes off on their fingers and you stick them in their mouth. So all the people who print nowadays are really wary of putting anything, you know, using inks and stuff that could be harmful because it'll come back to bite them at some point. So
Yeah,
The glossy paper, is it because they don't break down as well with that glossy surface?
it's like a plastic material, that's why. So you're basically adding plastic to your compost bin if you add that. It doesn't break down. It might fragment and you can't see it anymore, but it's still there. Microplastics. Yep. Other questions about organics? Yeah.
my kids do this with all those books that is there today, organic vegetable gardening.
There's not a really good one for this area, but there's some really good websites. The Rodale Institute has some good kind of how-to guides. Anything you do conventionally, you can do organically here. You just need to swap the products out. Yeah.
Grow strawberries organically in weeds and
I do at my house, yeah.
up there, people grow strawberries, so you just can't do it. Well, maybe you can't do it.
You can't do it on a large scale, yeah. They get a lot of fungal pathogens, and when they're growing them, like in Ponchatoula and the North Shore, they'll actually fumigate the soil before planting, and then they till them under as an annual crop, just because there's so many fungal pathogens here. Yep. But on a small scale, you can definitely pull it off. Other questions? Really?
and just so everyone knows, because the question was asked in the first class, and it's good, it was a good question, the information. On the final exam, the questions about native plants will come from the lecture only. Because there's no chapter in your manual
Right.
on native plants.
Yep.
And so we draw all that just from the lecture. Now, there's a lot of extra material there for you, even like Anna has up here, but we're not going to take questions from that. It will be from the lecture and the slides used in the lecture.
Paul?
Suggestion, what I did with Kiki and with your presentation, I paused it and I took my phone and took a picture of your tables and things.
Oh, yeah, that is a good idea. Yep.
I learned by writing, so I wrote everything that you had on there, my best, but I could barely hear it.
Yeah, we need to reshoot that
Yeah, we
one.
got to reshoot those.
Yep.
The sound was,
Yeah.
And those are actually lectures given live at one of the classes. Yeah, and what we're trying to do, and I think we told you in the beginning, a lot of the stuff that happens in the Master Gardener classes down here, this is the first time it's happening in Louisiana. We kind of are radical. We like to push the envelope and be as up-to-date and progressive as we can in a class. And so a lot of what the others do learn from our positives and from our negatives. And so some of the videos you're watching, they don't have one on it. So we had to make it. But now, you know, knowing the sound quality and all that, what we'll do, and you guys will hopefully, because we do at the end, we hand you guys something so that you can critique the class and everything, put that on there. But before next year's class, we will reshoot those videos, especially ones that are poor quality, and improve the quality.
And we've been able to invest in some better technology too, which is nice. So we've cobbled it together.
Just an overall question about like the extension agents. I mean, I know there's an office, but is there like a physical office that we can walk in and be like, hey, this strawberry leaf has this weird stuff on it?
We're at they say a 75% staffing plan, but we're actually really more at like a 50% staffing plan. So every parish has an LSU Ag Center office. Orleans Parish actually has 3. There's one in City Hall, Joe's counts, and then there's another one at the Corpus Christi Old Church and School.
In City Hall, it's the nutrition educators and the FNEP. Those people are in City Hall. 4-H is in the
Corpus Christi.
Corpus Christi building. And Ag is here in the same office that the Botanical Gardens office is in. So if it has to do with gardening and agriculture, it would be this office. In Jefferson, it's in the government building. Where Annie is now, it's in the government building there as well. That's St. Bernard Parish.
So other folks have questions, like someone comes to us and like, this is really weird, and we're stumped. It's okay to send them to there?
Well, those offices are almost never staffed by a horticulturalist. I'll be completely honest, because we're in the field, we're teaching. There's 3 of us covering 5 parishes, and now we're covering East Baton Rouge a little too. So we're almost never waiting for the phone to ring and looking at samples. There are secretaries at most of those offices, not all of them, because of the budget cuts during the Jindal administration, unfortunately. So like our office in Chalmette is staffed 2 days a week. That's it. Belchase is almost never staffed for Plaquemines Parish. The best thing to do is to photograph the sample, provide a lot of background info, and send it to gnogardening@agcenter.lsu.edu. If it's something that looks really unusual, we will come collect a sample. And that's how we've had to kind of handle it.
But the emailing and the pictures, I mean, you know, the quality of smartphones now, they do better pictures than the expensive cameras from years ago. Just as an example, between classes that I was out, or actually during one of the classes, looking at some magnolias, and the problem was the tips were dying and the leaves were flagging, and there's a little tiny beetle that bores into the wood and has its family in there, and the hole that it leaves is about the size, smaller than a pinhead actually. But I have pictures of it that you can easily see it. And plus, you know, you take the picture, and then once you got that, you can blow it up. If it's in focus, we can do a lot with pictures.
Yep. And usually we're seeing the same things. Like if somebody has a question about something, everyone's got a question about that this week. So, yeah. This week it's citrus rust mites, if anyone was, and rust mites.
Rust mites.
Yeah. Yeah, back here. So we have a new, I'm repeating the question because we're filming it. Good Louisiana or native plant seed sources. The one that I've been recommending to people is for seed mixes right now, but they're about to sell separate species. It's louisianaseed.com, and that's out of the Lafayette area. It's got 2 mixes on it right now. There's a Max Bloom mix, which is like a wildflower mix, and then they've got a Cajun Prairie mix too, which is really more for like meadow and large scale things. I have not tried either one because this is brand new. I'll be planting them in the fall and evaluating them. But that's a really good source. I also like Prairie Moon Nursery. They're a good source. Prairie Moon Nursery. This is all on your resources sheet in the Moodle also. Prairie Moon's catalog is awesome. Sign up for it because they tell you how to germinate each species that they're selling. So it's like a little manual almost, and I save it each year. Yep. Yeah.
And Rick Webb, what's his name?
Oh, Louisiana Growers, but he doesn't sell seed.
He doesn't sell to the public, he sells wholesale, but you go to his website, and he shows you everything he's got. So you go to a garden center here, not something like Walmart, but the private owned garden centers. Tell them you're interested in obtaining something you saw there, and almost all garden centers now order from Rick. And so they will get it for you.
Yep. And he's going to be at the Fall Garden Show too, so you can pre-order with him, and it's a good way to buy retail.
He comes to the fall and the spring show, and people can actually buy from him then. The rest of the year, you have to get it through your garden center.
Yep.
He's the Prairie Moon guy.
Prairie Moon is out of one of the prairie states. I think they're in Missouri.
So where is Rick from?
His is
He's in Amite,
Yeah,
Louisiana. Yep.
the Louisiana.
Louisiana Grower Nursery. Yep.
Louisiana Growers Nursery?
Yeah.
Yep. He was one of the first in the state to start growing natives on a commercial scale. Locally now we have a couple options, right? There's Delta Flora. Has anyone visited them? They're going to start back up in the fall and are expanding not only their inventory but the location too. So we're excited to see how that goes. They're expanding.
Like in the same space?
Yep. Delta Flora native plants. Yep. And that has started from a very small project, and now they're getting, clients from corporate accounts and different municipal projects too. So that's really good.
Greenhouse had a good selection.
Pelican has. Yep.
Yeah, Pelican does.
Yep, Pelican's on this list too. If you go to the Moodle, I have a 4-page document of native plant resources. It lists every single native plant nursery in Louisiana that I know of, and I update it regularly. Some of them specialize, a couple of them do just Louisiana irises, so you can get kind of specific. And it'll tell you if they're wholesale or retail. What's great is some of the big wholesalers, like Windmill and Bracey's, are starting to propagate more natives, so they're becoming more available at like Lowe's and Home Depot of all places. So if you ask, they will do it, which is cool. Other questions?
What was your email again? G&O Gardner?
G&O Gardening at agcenter.lsu.edu. It's on every Dan Gill article. It's on his radio show. It's on our website. Yep. And that's kind of the all-catching question and answer hotline. We're monitoring it between me, Joe, and Chris almost 24/7. It's the quickest way to get a diagnosis. Yep.
I have a question about sterilizing my soil, like solarizing.
Yeah.
Does the whole bed have to be clear, or can my plants still be in half the bed?
You could do it in chunks or sections. I've seen folks do that, particularly with their school gardens where they have like a fruit tree planted in the bed or maybe like a little pollinator garden. They'll just do the sections that they want to plant into for the fall. Yep. I have a really good picture of it actually I need to post. Yeah.
Perimeter of my yard floods, especially right now. I mean, it's floods like this much, and then it takes forever to go down. So it says it's growing things on the slope. So if I was going to grow a garden in there, say if I wanted to do just a flower for propagation, propagation, pollination, how could you grow it in there? And put
Oh, yeah.
things that are
Yeah.
kind of
You put the wetter-loving species at the bottom, right? The bottom of the bowl, because it's like a bowl shape if you look at it. And then your more, the wet-tolerant species up the edges. Yep. And if you go to WaterWise NOLA's website, they have a PDF manual of how to do that. Yep. WaterWise NOLA. WaterWise NOLA.
WISE.
Yep.
WATER.
And I will post that because I just found out about it like 3 days ago. I will post it in the resources tab. And that's for the Louisiana area, which is great.
You mix up your chlorine previously, it's in the water. How long is that?
I'm sorry?
When you mix up your water chlorine,
Well, that chlorine's going to sublimate off, right? So you want to use it that day, the bleach water solution. Oh, if you cap it, that would be okay. Yeah, but if it's open to the air, it's just going to evaporate out of there. Yep, sublimate. Yep. Other questions? No other questions? Okay.
A lot of the stuff I've been reading about, you know, composting or adding compost or adding organic material to your garden, they all kind of say like twice a year as a rule of thumb. But I plant my edible garden continuously.
I do too.
I always
Yeah.
have something growing there. So every time I plant a new crop, I need to be putting that same amount of compost.
What I do is I have a finished pile that I'm shoveling out of, and I use my wheelbarrow. So if I've got a section this big that I'm putting like bok choy and lettuce in, I'll just compost that part. Yeah, because here it's nonstop, right? We don't have real seasons. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, that question, if you don't have, like, your compost isn't ready yet,
Mm-hmm.
what would you suggest for letting?
If your compost isn't ready yet and you're planting a new section, you could either purchase it or you could put it on top and around the plants, depending on what the crop is. You don't want to smother the plants, especially leafy stuff, and you don't want that compost up next to the stem. So if possible, either buy some, use what you have later. But
Like a mushroom compost or like.
yeah, mushroom compost, black cow, those are all good things to use. It's getting easier to find bag compost locally. There's some local soil vendors you can buy from too, Laughing Buddha Nursery and Schmelly's Dirt Farm. Yep. And they'll even deliver, I think. Other questions? Okay. Okay, Dr. Joe had a good comment as we were walking up here. What's the difference between aggressive and invasive? Anyone? Yeah.
I'll try.
There's a big debate, so do your
My
best.
understanding is that aggressives are fast spreading and can choke out other plants, but invasive will actually take over and kill the native.
Did everyone hear that? Aggressives can take over and spread and are a little bit faster in growth habit, but invasives will take over. That's a good point. Joe, what do you think? I know you have an opinion.
What I've heard it described as natives are not ever considered invasive, but they can be considered aggressive. If it's not a native and it spreads rapidly, it's invasive and not aggressive.
A good example is the Virginia creeper versus the Caradia japonica, which we looked at in the weed lab, right? Two vines, they look really similar. Both of them will smother a hedge or a fence like overnight. One's native, one's from Japan. So I would get in a fight online if I posted that my Virginia creeper is invasive. And if I posted that the Caradia japonica, the bush killer vine, was aggressive, people would be like, oh no, it's invasive. So yeah, people have very strong feelings about it. That was a good thing, Joe, to bring up. Thank you. Who knows what this one is? Spider lily, yeah, Hymenaeus campus. So there is a native spider lily and a non-native one from South America. I've seen both of them growing in the same ditch on the North Shore because the South American ones become naturalized. So it likes this climate, it's very similar to where it's from, and we've got a native species of it too. There's some theories that it's starting to hybridize, maybe. So it's very difficult to tell them apart. I couldn't do it unless I dissect the flower and have my field guide open in front of me. But spider lilies in general, you know, if they're native or not, the native ones and the South American ones, they love these wet, low areas. So I know I've got an area like this in my yard where the water tends to collect, right? And not a lot of my traditional ornamentals will grow here because they don't like those saturated soils, and you can see all the clay in this. Spider lilies and the crinum lilies do really good low maintenance perennials for these areas. The other one I want to point out is the Louisiana iris. They love these wet conditions, and if you look, they're actually planted into these concrete mixing tubs, which you can see poking out of the soil. What the Iris Society found for growing Louisiana irises in New Orleans is they like to have like a pool of water or wet conditions even in the dry periods. So to really get them through, they've been burying these concrete mixing tubs with no holes in them at the soil level and planting into that with the native soil, and it just holds that moisture a little bit longer. And they're really successful with that technique. You can get those at Lowe's and Home Depot in the building materials section.
How deep are the tubs?
They're only this deep. Yeah, it's like a black plastic tub.
I have mine actually in a cast iron tub.
Yeah.
There's no holes in it, and they want it.
Yeah, they don't want holes or drainage. They really want these wet areas. And prior to the city really expanding out of the French Quarter, past Murray Street, if you're in the Bywater Marigny area, that was all swamp, and it was actually the global epicenter for iris diversity. We have 5 species of Louisiana irises, and they all cross-pollinate and hybridize with each other, so every color you could possibly imagine was in that swamp. And a lot of iris breeders can make these hybrids and these crosses, so one that's purple and more frilly, or one that's got an orange stripe and purple edges, because they're so promiscuous and easy to hybridize. So that's fun. It's fun, yeah. The irises primarily bloom in the spring, right around March. We actually have March and April. We have a lot of iris-centric events here in New Orleans, the greater New Orleans area, because we have a really active iris society. And one of the largest collections in the country of Louisiana irises is actually across the street in the Sculpture Garden. And when they are blooming, it's awesome. Everything's labeled. They actually hosted the National Iris Conference because it's that spectacular. Longview House and Gardens out off Bamboo Road also has a really good collection.
So the native iris, is it a particular color or are they varied?
So the native irises are typically a blue or a purple color, and then there's a copper colored one, and the Nelsonii I think is a reddish copper color. The yellow ones are not native. A lot of people were planting those yellow ones because they do so well. Those are invasive. And they've actually taken entire ponds and lakes over. So LSU's actually got them on their invasive species list. Yeah.
Question. This seems very shady for lilies and irises.
Yeah, it's dappled shade, and what you'll see is a lot of these natives that they recommend in full sun can actually handle some shady conditions in our area because it's so hot and so sunny. If you go out past the airport, that swamp where the Homa exit is, if you look in that cypress swamp during iris blooming time, it's a cypress swamp, right? So there's some deep shade pockets, but there's irises blooming there. They can handle it. Same with the spider lilies. I see them in open fields, like down in Muro. They're out in a cow pasture, but they also are growing in the ditches along the edge of the pecan orchard. So they can handle it. They're pretty adaptable in general, natives, which is part of why we recommend them. But yeah, this is a nice little low area, and you can see a couple of things. Oh, go ahead.
The native iris.
There's 5 of them. I don't know them all off the top of my head. There's Iris Nelsonii, Iris giganterilia, Iris hexagonia, and 2 others.
The butterfly circling your head.
But when they hybridize, you get white, you get yellow, you get pink, you get orange. The genes are there.
Is the Fortnite one native? The one that's white with like little streaks?
It's a Louisiana iris, but it's a cultivar. Yep. And there's actually a nursery out of New York called Zydeco Iris Nursery, which is funny because they're in New York, but they are the largest breeders of Louisiana irises in the world, which is funny because they're in New York, but they grow well up that high north away from here. And they're cultivating a lot of these cultivars. They're all named too. You can see these are labeled. And the Iris Society does a rhizome and plant sale a couple times a year, and they sell out in an hour. But you can get these things. Yeah, that's a really great plant society if anyone's interested in irises in particular.
October 16th.
October 16th is the next one. Get there early. At Longview? Okay. Yeah, get there early. We're going to go this way.
You know what? When I first came in the room, I didn't recognize you because you weren't wearing a mask. I'm used to seeing you with a mask.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess the rules confuse me.
How about this one? Anyone growing this one? This is one of my favorite natives. This is Spigelia or Indian pink. These are not quite open yet, but it's just gorgeous in the springtime and it blooms all summer long, kind of intermittently. Can take the shade, right? This is a good shady kind of wet area plant. Grows in the understory of the forest typically, bottomland hardwood forest. But it's also got a lot of ornamental value. I've seen perennial catalogs selling this for $24 for a 1 gallon pot. But it's native here. You can grow it very easily from seed in the fall. So Spigelia. What's this? Anyone know?
Interesting tree.
It's native.
Oh, yeah.
Anyone like fishing? The bean tree?
That's it.
Catalpa. This is a catalpa tree. It makes a beautiful, delicate, white orchid-like flower cluster in the spring, and then it makes these beans. And there's actually a grub that hosts in those beans, and people use it as a fishing bait. So sometimes you'll hear it called like fishing bait tree or worm tree. But it is a gorgeous spring bloomer, and it's a really great, kind of funky, tropical-looking native tree that I think a lot of people overlook.
Call it cigar tree.
Cigar tree.
Is another name.
Cigar tree.
They
smell wonderful.
They're awesome.
Yeah, I used to live in Denver, and we have catalpas up there too.
Yeah, they actually are cultivated as an ornamental, but they're native to this southern region.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, catalpa trees are actually used as an ornamental tree in a lot of parts of Europe and Southeast Asia. They've been kind of popularized there.
Hardy then.
Yeah, very hardy. So, what consumes the beans?
The beans.
There's the catalpa worm that eats the beans. Birds will eat them when they dry out. They're full of seeds.
Okay.
Yep.
So can you just plant one of the seeds?
So
if you don't want too many trees in your yard, you have to rake them pretty quickly.
Yeah. You can see these ones are almost right. They don't pop up everywhere like a tallow tree. They're pretty well tolerated. I can understand the caution. We're going to walk back here.
They're brown when they're ripe?
Yeah.
She said we had 5 weeks and you can go. Oh, yeah.
Has anyone grown this? Ageratum?
Yeah, ageratum.
It's a really great fall color plant because this will turn into a sea of delicate purple-blue flowers that are kind of fuzzy. Super easy to grow from cuttings and from seed. It's perennial. The frost will knock it back, and it tends to fill areas in, but it's very easy to pull. It's pretty well behaved. I would say it's aggressive, but not too aggressive. What is it called? This is Ageratum or blue mist flower. And that's one you can get at Pelican, Delta Flora. I saw it at Jefferson Feed this spring too. This is Silphium, very hard to grow from seed, but it's a nice kind of shade-loving, and there's some insects hosting on it, shade-loving aster family plant. I don't see this one in the nursery trade very often, but Pelicans have it. So, who knows what this is? Look at all these blooms, right? I want you guys to see what they did to it. I just worked it. What did they do to it? They topped it, right? Can you guys see where they cut it back? There's a stub. Without doing that in June, you would end up with one of these. Because they cut it, they've got 6 or 5 on each one. So it maximizes your blooms. It keeps it a little bit shorter. The Joe Pye weed over in the butterfly garden is almost 2 stories tall, right?
Wow.
So if you have a small space, this is a really good management tool, typically done in June and early July. The other plants we like to do this to are the swamp sunflowers, which we have over here, and all our solidagos. What are the solidagos?
Goldenrod.
Goldenrods. We think of goldenrod as a good fall color thing. If you want to really maximize your blooms, top them now, and you'll get double or triple the blooms. How about this one? Anyone recognize this?
Mallow.
Yes. Texas Star Hibiscus. They only open for a day and then they shed. It looks like the morning class pulled most of the seeds off. But this is another one, super easy to grow from seed. It's a really great pollinator plant, and it's got a tropical feel even though it's native. There's a white one too, and it's blooming over there. We'll walk past it. Is anyone growing this? Yeah? I have it at my house too.
You have any magnolia buds.
What's this? You saw it already.
I just.
That's the rattlesnake master, but it's growing in the shade. Does it look different?
Yeah.
It's a lot leggier, it's a little floppier, the leaves are more slender. So it can tolerate the shady conditions, but I would say its more ideal condition is over there, right? Full sun, good drainage. You can see the water collects here. It's struggling, but it's living. You know, right plant, right place. It's a good example. And you can see, look here, they topped this. That's ironweed.
Iron what?
Ironweed. It's got a really nice purple flower in the fall, and it looks like they just topped it recently. So we'll get more bloom.
Where is that best grown iron?
I would say dappled shade or full sun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not wet, because I killed it.
Yeah, not wet. Okay, what's this big tree here?
Oh, what's the cypress?
Cypress.
Some damage at the top. The top cut off. Oh, lightning? Somebody saw it.
That's sawed off. This is the Louisiana super plant. Does anyone know what it is? Beautyberry. Yep. Polycarpa americana. American beautyberry. It's a great wildlife plant, but it's also a good ornamental plant. It's been naturally selected, mostly by Rick Webb in Louisiana, to have berries that are purple, pink, white, every shade in between. He's got tall ones. He's got compact ones. There's a beautyberry for just about every space. And if you know anything about the Louisiana Super Plant Program, those plants have to thrive statewide, right? This is something that does well here. It does well in Shreveport. The birds eat the berries. You can actually make a jelly out of the berries as well. Yep, it's pretty easy to do. And it's a mosquito repellent. If you rub it all over it. It's got a smell to it too. So yeah, American Beautyberry actually made the LSU super plant list, as did the bulb cypress, which we're starting to see the kneeless or the less knee-prone cypress cultivars used around town a lot, right? In some of the wetter areas, the stormwater projects, I'm noticing the city is planting a lot of cypress. They actually, they make seed balls, and you can actually see some up there. And you wait for them to dry out, they place them open. I don't bury them, I just kind of scatter them in a pot, and I've had good luck with seeing that. It takes a long time for them to sprout sometimes because they're dormant. But very easy to start. And there are some cones and some fruit up there.
Can you grow it from a cutting?
You cannot grow it from a cutting. Over here, what are these little flowers? Anyone know what this is? These are rain lilies. They're a little, I think they're formed underground when they appear in wet conditions like we've been having. There's a lot of different kinds of rain lilies. Most of them are native here. There's some in this meadow where it's so wet they can barely mow it next to the parking lot. Take a look out there when you leave. There's a bunch of the red, orange colored ones. Rain lilies are really nice. They pop up occasionally in people's yards and you wonder what they are. But we're actually trying to grow them.
What are these purple flowers?
This is what we're going to talk about next. This is Stokes aster. It's not a real aster. It's Stokesia. It's growing here and kind of floppy because it's getting too much shade. It prefers a little more sun. Great perennial. I'm starting to see a lot of the landscapers around town incorporate this into their like more commercial accounts because it's low maintenance. It blooms like 6 months out of the year. It's super durable. It's kind of leathery. I've even seen it in planter boxes in the Central Business District. It can handle a lot of tough conditions. Wet feet, dry feet. It prefers a little drier conditions. Stokesia, you can find it at the big box stores in the spring even. And Pelican and Delta Flora propagate a lot of it.
What is it?
Stokes aster, Stokesia. Yep, and it's a good pollinator plant. Yep, very adaptable. I've seen it in containers quite successfully too. There's more of our mountain mint, right? And you can see where they've topped this ironweed for the fall. Look at how much new growth is coming since they topped that. Looks like they did it maybe a week ago. And now we've got easily 8 new growing points. Here's another one they topped. This is swamp sunflower. In the fall, this is what you see along the I-10 corridor heading to Baton Rouge. It's just gold flowers. It's usually the swamp sunflower. It grows really nicely in a clump. It's perennial. It will spread and fill in an area. Great pollinator plant. If you plant this with the Joe Pye weed and the ironweed, it makes a really great fall display, along with your solidagos, your goldenrods. We're seeing this get used a lot more in the stormwater projects too. It's very low maintenance. You can actually mow it down when it starts to look bad, and it comes right back. So, easy to take care of. How about this one? It's an edible. Edible natives. We like those. This is a mayhaw tree. If anyone's had mayhaw jelly or mayhaw wine, they are native to Louisiana, and they do produce a lot of fruit if they're in the right spot and they're mature enough. I've never seen this one produce, but it's still a pretty young tree. There was a commercial mayhaw industry on the North Shore for a while where they were making wine out of them. Really great jelly too. You can buy it sometimes at Rouse's. But yeah, mayhaw is a nice kind of smaller shaped ornamental tree too. It does bloom. It has some thorns, but not a lot. Prefers to be kind of in this understory situation. So here we've got some pines and some big crepe myrtles giving it shade. It doesn't like to be out in the open on its own. So if you have some bigger areas, some shady areas like under a live oak, this is a nice tree. And it won't ever get huge. This is another LSU super plant, though she's not in her prime right now. This is Virginia willow, Itea, and there's a cultivar of this. There's a cultivar of this called Henry's Garnet, and that's a super plant. It's a really great flowering plant in the springtime. The bees really enjoy the pollen. I see some nodding. Who's growing this? Yeah.
It has the white.
The white kind of cascading flowers. It's beautiful. And it made the super plant list because it's so adaptable. Sun, shade, wet, dry, it can really handle it. There's a GNO gardening article about it. In the fall, it actually does have some fall color, which is rare in our area. It gets kind of a reddish tone to the leaves, and it's deciduous, or at least partially deciduous, depending on the year. So if you want some good year-round interest, maybe in a perennial border, this is a nice one, the Itea.
Say it again, what is it?
If you look up Itea, I-T-E-A, or Virginia willow, and it's on our super plant list too. Yeah.
What are these little white flowers on stalks?
Those are the rain lilies.
Oh, they are too?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool, baby.
Wait, what ones are you pointing to?
No, they're on a stalk. There's about 20 here.
Oh, those are the Lariaceae, the lily purse. This is not native.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. And it's actually invasive at my mom's house in Michigan.
Okay. Another word, zero?
Yeah, Lariaceae, Lariaceae.
Depends on how you pronounce it.
What's this one? Everyone knows this one. Magnolias. This is the straight southern magnolia. This thing will get absolutely huge, right? It likes to sprawl. It'll take up 4 city lots if you let it. But there are some nativars, some cultivars of this native magnolia. Baby gem, or not baby gem, teddy bear, baby gem magnolia, little gem magnolia that are smaller and more appropriate for our urban yards. So look for those southern magnolia cultivars. They're out there. They're super easy to find in trade. There's one called Little something too. It's a newer one. It's even smaller.
Little Bear.
Little Bear. The smallest one is Little Bear. So look for Little Bear if you have a small yard. This is one of the biggest wax myrtles I've ever seen. Typically they're shrubs, but this one's been here a while. It's happy. It's in a tree form, It's called wax myrtle because if you look up, there's some berries and clusters. You can actually melt that down and make candles out of it.
Oh, wait, say that again.
Wax myrtle.
Oh.
It grows everywhere in South Louisiana. You can make candles out of the berries.
Oh, wow.
They're kind of scented too. Longview used to sell them at their holiday market. They have kind of a Christmassy smell to them, and they're pale green.
Is that related to like a bayberry?
Yeah, yep, same family.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, wax myrtles are typically bushes. I see them used in landscaping around town as like a green backdrop for like landscape beds. Super low maintenance, evergreen in our area. It's a good plant, but if you leave it where it is and it likes it, it can turn into a tree. So plant with caution.
What is this knob right here?
That's probably a gall or a burl. Yep. This is another nice little understory tree. Sometimes it's sold as swamp titi or tai. It's Cyrilla. And if you go out to Jean Lafitte, you'll see it kind of all over the place. It's a little past its prime, but these turn into lovely white flower spikes too. It stays as kind of a well-behaved shrub, or you can train it into a single or multi-trunk small tree. It likes being an understory tree, right? So if you've got another wet area, this is great. It can handle the sun also. But it is kind of like a marginal swamp species, swamp tai or Cyrilla.
That's big native.
Yeah, what's this one? This is really big. Pecan, yep. Yep. We all love and hate them.
I fear them.
Let's see. Here's that white Texas star hibiscus. It's just about done for the day. This is Alba. It's a really nice one. I like the white flowers in these shaded areas. It's a little pop of contrast where everything looks kind of the same. It's all green back here. What's this tree back here with the big leaves? Anyone recognize? Huh? Not avocado, though. It is a fruit tree.
It's a native.
Native fruit tree. It's a pawpaw, yeah. That's a pawpaw. We have some smaller ones scattered through here. I've not seen this one fruit, but they do fruit in New Orleans. One of my neighbors got a bumper crop this year because of our February freeze. So their flowers emerge and they smell like rotting meat, and they're pollinated by flies. Yeah, but they make a really delicious tropical flavored kind of banana and mango-y fruit. They're grown kind of all over the southern U.S. Chefs pay a premium for that fruit too. There's somebody downriver in St. Bernard Parish who's collecting genetics for pawpaws from all over the South and looking to do a field trial to see if we can develop a cultivar for our area so we can maybe have pawpaw orchards someday. So that's something that's really awesome because it's a native plant, right? A lot of our fruit trees that we rely on, that we plant, are not native here in New Orleans.
They need cross-pollination.
Huh?
They need cross-pollination, which is probably why that one is never, it flowers, but we've never seen fruit. It's probably because there's not another one close around for cross-pollination.
There's a small one here and there's another one over there now. So I think they realize that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you need at least two. They will propagate themselves asexually, where they'll send up runners and you'll get a big thicket of them where they're all just clones of one another. So you need to plant another one from a different source to get that cross-pollination. Blueberries are like that too. So certain fruits.
Pawpaw beer is very, very popular.
Pawpaw beer. Mm-hmm. Yep. Speaking of beverages, does anyone recognize this holly? Back here. This one. It's caffeinated.
Oh, is that chicory?
Nope, it's not chicory. It's Yopon holly. And it's considered a trash tree on the North Shore because it gets into this big thicket mess, but you actually can cultivate it just like you can all your other southern holly species that we use. You can make a tea out of the leaves, and it's North America's only native caffeine source. It was used by a lot of indigenous folks back in the day as a stimulant. There's a couple of tea companies in Louisiana and southern Mississippi where they're incorporating this into their tea blends as a caffeine source. And it's native, so that's cool. Back here is another edible native that I'm sure a lot of people have. What's this? Elderberry. Yeah, not only are these berries edible when they're ripe, people make cordials, they make jams, all kinds of stuff, elderberry wine out of these. The birds like them. You can make a syrup that has some medicinal qualities for respiratory disease. When the flowers are out and they're white, you can steep that in liquor and make Saint Germain.
I do that.
It's good, right? I've done it a couple times and it's awesome. And it's cheap. So, cheaper than buying the bottle. It's very, very simple. Elderberry is not a tree, even though it gets really tall like a tree in our area. It's actually an herbaceous plant. And it propagates super easy from cuttings and from seeds. There are named cultivars of elderberries. In our area, most people are just picking the wild ones because they're everywhere.
So elderberry is Louisiana.
Which is weird because people outside of Louisiana pay a lot of money for elderberry trees, almost $40 a piece. And here, at least in my yard, they come up absolutely everywhere.
They sell it as an antioxidant on
Yeah.
the drugstore shelf, and
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy where outside of the native range something can be so sought after, and here we're just like, oh, I mow that down every weekend. Yeah. Yep. If you get a chance to look at this little baby pawpaw, there's some damage to the leaves, which is awesome. What happens here? Not caterpillars. Bees.
Those are bees.
Leaf cutter bees. They've used the leaf to build their nest, and they cut little circles out of it and haul it away and make these beautiful tube nests. And that's what they lay their eggs in, and they put a bunch of paralyzed spiders in there for their babies to eat. It's pretty gnarly, but if you ever see this on your leaves, it's not a bad thing. They'll never kill your plants. It's just the leaf cutter bee using it for nesting material. And they love this little pawpaw. It's not getting that pawpaw. No, it just likes the little one for some reason.
They like roses too.
Yeah, roses too. I see them on there a lot. Okay, we're gonna walk out this way. And we're gonna stop at this tree right here. You did the right spot. You did. What's this one without looking? Bay. No, it's not bay. It's black cherry. It's a native cherry to our area. It's not going to make the big fruits like you buy at the grocery store, but it does fruit. And old people in New Orleans might remember Cherry Bounce.
My mom made that.
Yeah. It seems to be, you remember them making it? If you collect the fruits and make them into booze, I actually had somebody bring it to my office for me to try once because he was like, oh, you're new here, you need to try this. It's insanely high alcohol content. And it's very good. Lots of sugar. It's almost like a limoncello process where you fill your carboy with the fruits and you fill the rest of the space with the sugar. And you let it do its thing. Cherry Bounce. But it's also a really beautiful tree for our yards. Look at this bark. It's very ornamental. It will get kind of large. If you've got room for one, it has a lot of wildlife value. The birds like it, and a lot of lepidopterans, so caterpillars and moths, will actually use it as a host also. And they're becoming more easy to find in the nursery trade. Back in the day, you called Bantings and asked for one, they'd say, what do you want that for? But now they're starting to carry them, so that's been kind of cool.
So you can also just eat the fruits?
You can eat them, but they're really, really tart and bitter. Much better consumed in liquid form.
They're mostly seed.
Yeah.
Huh?
Mostly seed.
How do they deal with frost?
How do they deal with frost? They're native, they can handle frost no problem.
Is it slow growing, relatively
It's
speaking?
slow at first and then it's fast.
So it looks like it's shade, like a under.
It can be an understory tree, but it can also be out in its own in the open. Yeah, black cherry is great. It's starting to get a lot of attention from native plant growers, but also from landscapers because it doesn't have a lot of pest and disease problems. It's not fussy. It's kind of one of these plan it and forget about it things. So I'm really happy to see that.
Termites like it?
Termites like everything, so that's not a good argument.
It is poisonous.
It is poison.
This is. The leaves, the wilted leaves and twigs, very toxic.
Or you can eat the berries.
Yes.
Yeah, but they don't taste good. But if you ferment them in alcohol, they're great. As are most things.
With really bad tasting berries. Let's see what we can do.
Or you can consume the alcohol and then eat the berries. You don't notice how bad they are.
Notice how bad they are.
They eat the whole tree, yeah.
Who knows what this is?
Roses.
Yeah, it's native.
The shrub.
Oh.
It's not boxwood. That should look familiar.
It's a great boxwood replacement.
So boxwoods in the New Orleans area are not in good shape. They are getting a couple of diseases, boxwood dieback. They get a lot of root rot too, Phytophthora in particular. This time of year we're seeing a lot of that. And then there's a new moth too that's invasive called the boxwood moth, which we've had some reports of. We just got that email the other day, so be on the lookout. Your boxwoods are almost certainly going to fail in New Orleans eventually. You can't grow them like we used to as of the last 20 years. So what do? If we want a nice formal garden, like this is a parterre garden, we need some alternatives. This is a dwarf Yopon holly. It's an excellent alternative. We saw the big Yopon over there. This is the dwarf selection of it. And look at how gorgeous it is. You can really train it into any form. It makes an excellent topiary, an excellent hedge. It stays kind of in the shape. You keep it in for a lot longer than the boxwood. It needs less frequent pruning, which is always a good thing, right? And it's frost tolerant, it's rain tolerant, it can take drought, it can take pretty much everything you handle at it or throw at it. And when these were pruned like this at first, it was kind of bushy, and Mike came through and he just whacked it back, and it was nothing but sticks, and now look at it.
How long ago was that?
2 years ago?
Yeah, it didn't take 2 years to look like this,
to
though.
fill in, though.
It filled in really
It was a matter
fast.
of months, a couple of months.
What is the plant spacing on these?
Probably 18 inches if I had to guess. Yeah, we're recommending this a lot as a boxwood alternative because we'll see where the boxwoods get a disease. Landscapers go from house to house, right? They're not sterilizing their tools in between houses, so they're spreading it from client to client. And then what do? They replace it with another boxwood, right? You can only fight that battle so long before the client or the homeowner's like, hey, why is my bill so high? Why are you buying all these boxwoods? You're just dying. They still want that nice, formal, neat look. This is what we're recommending to people. And this is like the best example in the state. Yeah. Dwarf Yopon. And natives don't have to be messy, right? If you're really satisfied. Okay, so this is the pollinator garden, just the other side of it. And does anyone know what this one is? Porterweed. Yep, this is the purple porterweed. There's also a coral porterweed. It's an excellent butterfly and bee plant. There's some shorter statured cultivars of the native. This is what that is. The one at my house is taller than I am and kind of sprawly, but that's another one that you could top halfway and you end up with a bushier plant. Porterweed's a great native. We're starting to see this one in trade a lot more too. What's this above Dr. Joe's head? It's a fuzzy balls. Yep, that's buttonbush. It's all over Jean Lafitte National Park on the West Bank. Makes an excellent conversation piece in a garden though, because look, the walls look like COVID. Especially when they're in their prime. They're really spiky looking. They look like little viruses. They're really interesting. They're being used in a lot of florist trade now too, in a bouquet. This one's trained up in a nice little multi-trunk tree. It stays kind of this smaller stature. It can take sun, it can take shade, and in the daytime this thing is absolutely buzzing with bees. So buttonbush, you can actually get that in a lot of nurseries now too.
What is this red one right here?
This one, that's canna, Indian shot canna. There's a lot of debate whether it's native or naturalized here. It's one that is found naturally in the Caribbean islands, so we think it was brought here as part of early colonial time.
It appeared in my yard.
Yeah, the seeds travel. Yep. It's called Indian shot canna because when those seed pods dry out, there's like BBs in there. They're very hard, little round seeds, and they used to pack shotgun shells with them. That's how the story goes. Who knows what this one is? It's hard to see. It's native. It's a native tree called the buckeye. Yep, and it makes a beautiful red flower. I've seen white forms and yellow forms of the flower too. Nice little tree, and it makes these really interesting buckeyes, almost like the candy at Christmas time. That's a really good one. And here's a Joe Pye that did not get whack crack.
Definitely less good. Noted.
This is Joe Pye that did not get a haircut. And you can see how big it gets and how much fewer flower structures there are. So if you were to cut this even now, each one of these nodes would start a new flower cluster. So it's a good kind of side-by-side comparison. And then for the butterfly gardeners, everyone always asks which native milkweed should we grow in New Orleans. In this little patch here, we've got Asclepias perennis, which is the aquatic milkweed. The seeds for this, all of it that's being sold locally, came out of the Bonnie Carriage Spillway right outside of town. That's where they are collecting the seed from. You can grow it from cuttings too. And it's kind of a smaller milkweed. It's got white flowers and it's bloomed in my garden all 12 months out of the year.
What are these little delicate purple ones?
That's not native, it's a false indigo, Baptisia, but that's a nice pollinator plant for sure. They love it. But yeah, these actually have monarchs on them now, and why it's being recommended is it flowers and it really flushes out in the spring to coincide with the monarchs returning from Mexico. We're their first stop, right, on the migration. They fly across the Gulf and they land here in New Orleans. And they breed here, and then that next generation goes a little further north, and then they stop, and then they breed, and then the next generation goes a little further north, and they end up all the way in the Arctic Circle in Canada. Same string of generations, and then in the fall it reverses, right? But this milkweed really flushes out early in the spring, February, early March, when that first wave of migratory monarchs from last year that overwintered in Mexico come back. So that's why we're growing that. There is a disease on some of the milkweed.
Black Death?
Black Death or OE. It's a protozoan and it's like an STD for butterflies.
So should you get rid of the whole plant if you see them?
Nope. So there's two schools of thought. There's the monarch mamas who say burn everything with fire, and then there's the researchers out of UFL in Florida who say they naturalize and get used to it, they overcome it, and they survive with it. So here in our area, yeah, kind of like vaccination, they evolve and adapt. The school of thought is cut your milkweed back a couple times a year so it grows back fresh. Well, the next time an infected butterfly lands, guess what? And you don't know which ones are infected, which ones aren't. It's usually around 40 to 50% of them test positive here in New Orleans. In Miami, it's 87%. I just learned that.
It's Miami, yeah.
And yeah, they're doing a lot of breeding. There's a PhD student at Tulane who is studying OE and monarchs here in New Orleans. She's sampling all over the GNO area, and she will be presenting at the October Butterfly Academy, which will count for Master Gardener continuing ed credits. It's 3 Saturdays in the fall starting in October at Tulane. And she's going to teach one of the sessions, and it's all about the OE protozoan parasite, how it impacts them and their migration abilities, but also how the butterflies have adapted. And we have a non-migratory resident population of monarchs in New Orleans, in Houston, all along that Gulf Coast rim, that are breeding and living their happy little lives without that migration step. So we have both populations. We have the migratory and the non-migratory ones. And now the question is, does the non-migratory population impact or disease or carry the OE pathogen to the migratory ones and impact their chance of survival and migration? We don't know yet, but that's what her PhD is about. So she'll be presenting that in October, and it's pretty groundbreaking research. Yep.
Is there native phlox?
There is a native phlox called Opelousas phlox. I think that's Robert something. I can't remember the actual cultivar of that one. Garden phlox.
Don't panic.
Yeah, that's not the native one, but there is a bunch of native phloxes. They bloom in the springtime, and you can see them all along the, in between Shreveport and Lafayette, that highway. The 49, yep. In the springtime, it's everywhere. Yep. Okay, well, we are getting there, and we can go back in. I've got one more thing, and then we can turn them loose.
Okay, Anna's got one more thing for you.
Okay, before I turn you loose to enjoy the garden this evening, one of our morning class students brought in a really great native mallow, some seeds to share with the entire class. This is halberd leaf rose mallow. It's got a really nice kind of Cajun hibiscus look to it, but it's native here. Nice kind of serving plate size blooms that are pale white on the outside and rosy on the inside with kind of a red center. He said plant them this fall. There's about 10 to 12 seeds per packet. Let them get about this big, plant them out in the garden, dappled shade, full sun. They will get about this tall and about this wide, and they will bloom profusely. So share them with your friends, share them with your neighbors. We can pass these out.
Do they grow in the spillway?
They do grow in the spillway. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yes, Paula? Oh, you want some? Yeah, we'll pass them around. Halberd, mallow, rose mallow, and we have a lot of native mallows here in New Orleans. We're one of the epicenters for that.
Like now that you're driving across the spillway right now.
They're gorgeous. Yep. You can have them in your yard. They're really adaptable to an ornamental use. And you can plant them now. You can plant them now through November-ish, and then after that, you kind of want to wait till March. They survive the winter. They will get knocked back, but they come back stronger. Yeah. You could probably direct seed them, but they'll get lost. Yeah.
Do you know the science of anything?
Not off the top of my head. It is a true hibiscus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I think there's goblins.
Yeah, they've got them too.
This is it?
Okay.
I can show you a picture.
Are there any questions about natives? Yes.
I just wanted to ask you this. There is something that looks like mallow blooming on Highway 90. Between Avondale and
It's definitely a mallow.
It's definitely a mallow. Because it blooms this time of year, and they're taking their food.
You notice how
I mean, that's definitely a native.
Oh yeah. There's like a dozen-ish native mallows in Louisiana, and a lot of them are found right here in Orleans Parish. I'm growing the Pinelands hibiscus, which is sometimes called wild okra. There's the rose mallows, there's the swamp rose mallows, there's a bunch of them. So.
And another thing, is there a native rush?
There are native rushes and native sedges that have a really good ornamental use. Rick Webb and Amit is the one who's really growing them.
I work up in the cane fields, so they're all...
And they're clumping, right?
Now, if I dug them up in bar one, would I do okay?
Yeah, yep. Yeah, absolutely. Other questions about natives? Yes.
I saw some cypress pines out there. Are those natives?
They are not. They're actually related to morning glories. We do have native morning glories in this area, but they're really hard to tell apart from the invasive ones unless you get nitpicky about the botanical features. That one for sure is not, and I would say it's invasive if you let it, but it's easily controlled. And it's a good hummingbird plant.
Who at the Fall Garden Show will have the most natives?
At the Fall Garden Show, there will be several native plant vendors. There will be Rick Webb with Louisiana Growers. Delta Flora will be there. Pelican Greenhouse will be rolling out their fall inventory and should have about 80 species, is what I'm hearing. All different things, trees, shrubs, herbaceous plants, wildflowers. There's some new growers coming online who I have not checked out yet, too. So it's becoming more popular, and we're starting to see, there were 2 growers through the Propeller Fund that got grant funding to start their nurseries. And they're focusing on stormwater management and native plants. So I'm pretty excited. New Orleans is kind of leading the state with this kind of movement with the green infrastructure and incorporating the natives. Now that you know what some of them look like, you'll start recognizing them around town, especially in the landscaping, because it just makes sense, right? It's really wet here, it's hot, it's humid. Why are we planting stuff that we have to fuss over? So, yep. Other questions or comments? So you don't need to rip everything in your garden out, right? You can tuck them in everywhere, like they do here.
Is there anybody working on getting some of the roadways and municipalities and things to named national?
Yes.
Like Airline Expressway and railroad track systems and things like that.
So the question was, roadways, railroad tracks, is there a movement or somebody working on planting those with wildflowers? Yes, they do that in other states, and Louisiana Department of Transportation is working with University of Louisiana Lafayette. Their old horse farm and dairy farm is now wildflower farm. And they have a mini combine where
If we
they
want to help with that,
contact ULL. It's their ecology center, and you can buy their seed mix. They're producing acres and acres of wildflower seed, harvesting it with this combine that's about this big, and then they're storing it in the old dairy facility that's turned into a seed bank. And Department of Transportation is piloting buying sacks of seed and hydro seeding it on the roadways so that they don't have to mow as much, which saves them money.
Oh yeah, when you drive to Atlanta.
Yes.
Along the roadways.
Yes. I just drove to Atlanta and it's gorgeous. They're not mowing their medians, they just filled them with wildflowers.
So Department of Transportation is also where you can get to, because the railroad system is different.
That's different, and the railroad people, they actually spray herbicide out of a train car.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
So I stopped at the Farmville Parish because I live close by. I don't want to read this stuff.
And railroad track spray operators are under a different license than most pesticide applicators. They can spray a lot of things that most people can't. I will say that they're only spraying that strip, right?
Yeah.
And they have to adhere to the drift laws. And the only reason this Cajun Prairie still exists, we used to have millions of acres of it, now it's fewer than 500 acres. It was rediscovered in the 80s along a railroad track in Eunice. And it's still there, you can go visit, and it's been preserved and restored. And that's because they were just spraying the herbicide on the strip, everything else was kind of left alone.
It was okay.
And it made it.
Okay.
Yep.
So I can contact.
ULL's Ecology Center.
They'll tell me about the railroad.
They have a website also that you can get in touch with them. They did have some staff turnover during the pandemic, so the person I usually contact is no longer there. They're kind of taking their time getting up and running. But it is a huge state-of-the-art facility you can tour and you can purchase seed from. Yep.
You can take tours.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
How far is Eunice?
Eunice is open all the time. It's about a 2.5, 3 hour long trip. They do a Cajun Prairie tour out there with their Native Plant Society, Acadiana Native Plant Society.
That could be a master garden.
It could, yeah. And it's really interesting. I've been out there in different seasons, and it's always something to look at. Yeah. Other questions about natives before I turn you guys loose? Okay, enjoy the garden. I think they're still slinging mojitos over there.